Hi, Mitch. Really lovely to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. It's a little hectic over here. I'm playing a couple of classes, so, but I'm ready for whatever you want to ask me.
Lovely. We do appreciate your time. So, in our PMI Offcuts group, we have shared a link to your book, and it turns out that some of the fans have already bought it, read it, etc. But if you could just tell us a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it, that would be lovely.
Okay. Originally, I was one of the charter members of Foam Carving, another group on Facebook, and I became administrator and took that group up to 80,000 when I retired from being their administrator. Everybody over there asked the same question. What do we buy?
Yeah.
What is this stuff? How do you code it? And so I decided to write a book that answered all those questions one time.
Yeah.
Instead of having to repeat the answer over and over again. So that was the inspiration.
Lovely. Okay. Brilliant. So I do have a set of questions for you today. So I am sorry if they are going to be repeated questions, but we'd love to hear from the professional. So if I may start with just talking about the craft a little bit. So in general, how did you get into foam sculpting?
Fine. Okay. It was a evolutionary thing from going to clay and then to casting bronze and then working in the same entertainment industry. Fiberglass sculpture is applied to foam here in the States for longevity of the product because crowds can be a little mischievous sometimes. Let's just say. So foam was the material that's chosen. My first time to carve it was at Walt Disney World, but it was urethane foam, which I called surfboard foam because that's what most surfboards are made out of. Then I moved to New Orleans and went to work for a company called Blaine Kern that does huge monograph slopes. And that was my first time to actually use the expanded polystyrene EPS foam. I had no clue as to how to use it. It was user saw. We had foam from a can that once you opened the can, that was it. You had to open another can and another can. But eventually I came to Jacksonville, Florida, and was doing large pirate ships. And I learned how to carve with the knife there. That sounds funny. I already knew how to carve, but it was how do you carve foam? It's not like carving wood. It's not like playing with clay. It's not like anything else. It has a lot of resistance. It breaks very easy. It's lightweight. But boy, you can get some really fun stuff out of
it. So what projects do you enjoy making the most then?
Say that again.
So what projects do you enjoy making the most?
Mermaids.
Yeah?
Yeah. I carved my first mermaid while I was in Jacksonville to go on the front of a ship.
Okay.
And I had been afraid to try figurative stuff in foam because of those characteristics I just mentioned. So I found a very small knife among some leftover equipment in that shop. It's called a tomato knife. And it had a curve to the blade like a scimitar sword. And that allowed me to get in and get those really small details once I learned how to sharpen it. It has to be razor sharp.
Okay. Lovely. And so what would you say would have been the hardest thing that you had to sculpt in your lifetime?
The hardest?
Yeah,
Is that what you asked me?
that's right.
Okay. I just did Venus de Milo.
Right.
Okay. For a ballet. And it was Sleeping Beauty. And they chose several sculptures that were 9 foot tall. And it has to look like what you're carving, but yet you're on a limited budget, and all the cost pose are very hard to do. I carve with a knife, a hot wire, sandpaper, and I finally get there, but it is time consuming. It's because you have to cut off sometimes paper thin slivers to get the details you want. Everybody knows what Venus de Milo looks like. There's a lot of sculptures out there that have drapery on them, but that's not what they are. So I had to make it look exactly like that.
It's a lot more complicated than what people might think it is, isn't it?
Right. The reason I chose that was because of the theme Sleeping Beauty. These are backdrops in the play. There was another one that was really just about an 18-inch tall sculpture in a museum that they sent me. They also wanted that one to be 9 foot tall. And both of them, because one looked left and one looked right, gives you the image of beauty. And so, 9 foot tall is big. And they were white against a backdrop to look like they were marble. Yes, it was difficult.
Sounds like it, yes. So how long would you say a typical project takes?
That one was unusual in the fact that it ran from September to March.
Okay.
That was a long deadline. But there were 4 things in there. There were the 2 9 foot talls. There was a bassinet for the child. And then there was a chaise lounge that was mostly out of stone where Sleeping Beauty would wake up. That one was much longer. Most of the time, a lot of times, I have a week to do something. I do a lot of movie props, and so you learn how to do things very fast when needed to.
Sure, for sure. So if you were to give some advice for the beginners, or what would you say the main mistakes that beginners tend to make?
The first thing they have to do, if they have any art background, if they've sculpted in clay or some other medium, is get some foam. Get the sharpest kitchen knife that they have and sharpen it with a steel or some stone to get it as sharp as possible and start experiencing the characteristics of foam.
Okay.
The foam that we're talking about is referred to as bead foam because it's made up of expanded beads that are put into a huge steel box and they're hit with temperature steam and they expand. They kind of bond together. Okay. Once you start working with it, you will find out very quickly how easy they come apart and how the static electricity gets them all over you. And that's an experience of you need to learn when you can break them, when you need to slice them, when you need to sand them. Foam is very strong in compression. Most blocks that you have, even if it's shipping foam, that's the foam that they put into a container to keep, say, a radio or a piece of electronics equipment from breaking. You can stand on it. Okay, and it's not going to compress, but you can pick it in your hands and you can break it up very easily. So you need to learn that characteristics. You need to learn not to be afraid of it.
So would you
be comfortable with it? Yeah.
Sure. So would you say the beginner should start with something, well, get to know the foam and then start with something quite simple?
Try to make a ball.
Right.
Try to make a round ball. Okay.
Right.
If you've had any art courses, try to remember what your first teacher told you about drawing forms. Try to make a square. Try to make a triangle. Try to make a circle or a ball. Once you get that, I used to say, that's silly. I'm just going to draw what I'm drawing. It wasn't really until I started carving foam that I saw the value of that advice, that so many things are cylinders or squares or triangles or pyramids. And you're not sculpting foam anyhow. You need to have a good light source, and you need to sculpt shadows.
Right.
That's what's going to build your form. That's what's going to build your detail.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So for yourself then, how do you stay creative with your projects? Or do you get all the projects sort of like given to you by your customers?
When I went freelance and stopped working for companies, okay, then I started using the internet and doing work in progress posts. And from that, I started getting emails or texts that people were inquiring, could I do this or could I do that? Because knocking on doors doesn't work. People want to see if you can do something. So, yeah, now, because of my group, which is Foam Carving Methods by Mitch Mitton, I share everything I know with nothing held back. And because of that is where most of my work comes from now.
Okay.
I did a lot of work on maybe 12 or 14 different movies. But that's almost like working for a company again. But most of my work is freelance commission.
So you're never
Okay.
work, are you?
I don't really like working for anybody and waiting for somebody else to make a decision. Most of my work comes in after they ask the question. I would request them to send me an email of a sketch or a photograph or something from Pinterest, some sort of research so I can see what they're talking about. Once I get that, and if we agreed on an amount, then I do a tremendous amount of research because they usually send me one angle of something, which is not sufficient enough to carve something. As I mentioned earlier, the little 18-inch terracotta that I blew up to 9 foot tall only had one view. And I went on Facebook and I was saying how I had a hard time because I was just looking on Pinterest. And it was a descriptive term. This one didn't have a name like Venus de Milo, which you could search. This was another word that just meant beautiful woman in a veil or in a robe. So someone said, okay, do a Google search. And this is what they found. And they found the photos of it actually in a museum. So then I had enough. I mean, when you're doing fabric folds, what are they doing on the backside? You know, if someone has seen it, you better have it right. It becomes a mess if you don't know what it looks like back there.
So how long have you been doing this for then?
Wow. I decided to be a sculptor when I was working on my MFA in I started in 1969.
Right.
I had cast some things in aluminum for a class. And then once I graduated, I started doing some research. And at the time, there wasn't a net. So every time you went to a new city, you went to the library, you found every magazine you could. Every time you bought a book, you tried to see who that influenced that author, and you tried to find those books. But it was in clay first and wax. I only started about 1992 that's when I was at Disney, doing foam sculpture.
Okay. So obviously you've been doing this for a while now. What would you say is the most satisfying part of the process? Is it the actual process itself, or is it the end product?
You're always working towards that end product. And so if you've got good research, you're pushing yourself to see how much of that you can capture in carbon and foam. My process has evolved around not just carbon foam because it has limitations. So I have learned to push the foam really, really close. Then I stop. Then I coat it with epoxy to stabilize it. Then I come back with epoxy putties on top of that. And I can build details then like I'm sculpting in clay. So I have the best of both worlds. I have a lightweight fabric. I can carve very fast, but I get the same details I can get as I was sculpting in clay. I just don't have to fire it. When I'm finished sculpting, it's ready to paint.
Okay. So, and have you ever had a project that failed completely? Something went terribly wrong, or is it usually a fully right?
I was invited to a monster convention. And I don't do monsters. This was a hop convention, okay? So once upon a time, I had drawn a little monster that was on a television series. And I thought, well, I'll do him. So I decided I would carve him 2 foot tall. And I only had about 6 weeks before I was going to that show, but I wanted to have an example. So I started carving on him. I really only had the one view, but one of the problems you have if you use my method is that foam is susceptible to certain chemical reactions.
Okay.
When I say I put fiberglass on my sculptures around the world, there's a misconception that fiberglass resin is an actual product. That is a marketing term. There is no such thing as fiberglass resin. There is polyester resin, there is vinyl ester resin, there is epoxy resin, but there is no such thing as fiberglass resin. However, there are some other things that are in resins that people use. Acetone, lacquer thinner, xylanes, and other chemicals like that that if you pour just a drop of that on the ESP foam, it will melt a hole all the way through it in a matter of seconds. The project I was working on, I had sealed with epoxy. Epoxy clear. It will not melt foam, but you can't see where you brushed it on sometimes. So I brushed it on. Epoxy is expensive. I switched over to polyester resin. There were some holes in the epoxy. I didn't see them, but polyester resin found them and melted holes all through there. So I use that as an example in my book.
Right.
Is what happens if you don't do the right combination of things. To solve that problem, I now use earth pigments like sienna, burnt sienna, ochre, iron oxides. All these are oxide or earth pigments. You can mix them into your epoxy. You get a good opaque color. I now have a red sculpture or whatever, and I can see that there's no white showing through.
Mm-hmm.
After I did one of those 1 week projects, I decided, why am I switching back to polyester? I know it's cheaper, but polyester resin sets up with oxygen. The chemical that you use is a peroxide. If you think about what oxygen and peroxide means, you'll understand the connection. So if you have some polyester resin in a can with some space in it, the next time you go open that can, you'll have a hard lump of set up plastic in the can. So I decided right then, wasting plastic instead of buying epoxy was not economical. So now I switch over and I totally use epoxy for everything.
Okay. Thank you for that. And what would you say is a project that you are most proud of?
Okay, I didn't understand that one.
Sorry, what is the one project that you are most proud of that you've completed in your history of foam sculpting?
I sculpted Santa Claus. Okay, this was a very famous Santa Claus. This was from the cover of Saturday Evening Post. Norman Rockwell had painted it. He painted many of them. This was Santa at the Globe.
Right.
So you had a full-size fat man in slippers sitting on a stool, looking through a magnifying glass at a book of who's been naughty and nice, trying to figure out who was going to get a toy. And he's looking at a globe to find out where they are on the globe. Okay, that's a lot of very complicated elements.
So much detail, isn't there?
Yeah, this was authorized by the family. So that meant it had to be exact copy of his illustration, his painting. When in the project involved, they needed 6 copies. The original assignment said, they don't have to all look alike. Well, I told you he was a fat man, okay? Sculpting a fat man is not easy. Yeah. He's not in any of your anatomy books, okay? Atlas or somebody like him is in the anatomy books. So I had to really study the photograph, and I only had 6 weeks to do it in. Well, it took me 2 weeks to do the first one, and I found out very quickly, I'm not going to go through that 5 more times. Even though they said they didn't have to match, it was an official Norman Rockwell project, and so they had to match. So I made molds, and I did them. And it was a very successful project. I incorporated fabric in there. I did because he had a shirt on. So when you see the original, it looks like he's sitting in his long underwear on a stove. I had to make a stove. I had to make a footstool for his foot. Then I had to make the globe. And this is a globe that was on an antique stand that was holding it up. So all these elements had to go together. But it came off really well. This is when department stores were very much alive in the United States, just 6 years ago. And it went to 6 department stores around the country. And they used them for about 3 years.
Wow.
Until the net started getting all the purchases. But yeah.
Is there a photo?
It was very good. Very good project.
Sorry.
Say it again.
Is there a photograph anywhere of those Santa Clauses that you carved?
I have pictures, portraits. Yeah, I have that.
Yeah.
I'll send them to you.
Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant.
Okay.
Okay. So our group members have sent in some questions for you. So if you don't mind, I'll just quickly go through some of these questions with you. Okay. So the first question I've got is from Jane Ward. What are the best tools to use for those starting out? So I know you mentioned very sharp kitchen knives, but perhaps you can just go over it again with us, please.
Okay. Instead of just a kitchen knife, if you were doing a search on the net for a tomato knife, and there's dozens of them, most of them are serrated. Try to find one that's not serrated, because foam has a high friction coefficient. So every time you hit one of those ridges with that serration, it causes a problem. So I use what's called a fillet knife for filleting fish. And I like one that is flexible, so you can bend the blade.
Okay.
They are forged instead of just a piece of steel. They're forged. And the blade's about 7 inches long. Okay. That's my main cutting tool. Okay. I know y'all have horses in Great Britain. I think perhaps shall use a curry comb too. That's a round series of rings that are used to remove burrs and things like that from the coat of a horse. Okay. It's a series of teeth in a circle. When you run that over foam, you can break off little bitty sections and you can use that to blend foam. Okay. The other thing is very coarse sandpaper. To carve something or cut something soft, you need the sharpest possible material that you can get. So coarse sandpaper is broken grit, and each one of those points is very, very sharp. It's so sharp it'll hurt your hand. So I use what we have. I'm not sure what your measure is there. Here we use 36 grit or 40 grit sandpaper. I think y'all use the same system there. But as you coarse sandpaper, that also blends. Then you get into cutting with a hot substance, like a wire or a blade. Okay. You can get by with pruning saws. Pruning blades have more space for the sawdust from cutting a tree to come out. Well, that also helps in cutting foam.
Okay.
So any kind of pruning blade would help. Rasp, coarser the rasp, the better. those are the basic tools that I tell someone to use when they're working on plants. Foam comes in different densities. Okay. Here we call it 1 pound. Not like your dollar, but that's the density of the material. It comes in 1 pound, 1.5 pound, and 2 pounds, and keeps getting denser as you go. The denser the foam, the more resistance it is to carve. Okay. So what you use in one particular type of carving, you can't use in another one. It doesn't work as well. But the denser the materials, then you can use a rotary tool. Here we call them a Dremel, but it's just basically a tool with a bit in the end that will take away bits of material. My cat is getting close to the phone. Okay.
Bless.
Those are the basics. That's what I'm telling someone to get.
Yeah. So we have a second question from Risa, and I think you answered that question. She's asking, what are the best tools to use for carving and shaping? But I think you touched on that. So,
okay.
Yeah. Then I have a question from Poppy. She asks, what tools do you use for finer details? Do you only work from sketch pad or do you sketch directly onto the surface? And she said, thank you to whoever made this happen. Obviously, there's lots of people that very happy to have you interviewed. So thank you from everyone.
Okay. All right. I think the question was, do I draw on the foam?
Yeah, so
where she was asking?
I'll break it down because there's 3 questions, I suppose, in one. So what tools do you use for finer details?
What foam, right?
Tools, what tools do you use for finer details?
Oh, okay. I usually carve with just one foam. And here's why. I like to use the 1 pound foam, which is almost like the foam that's in your packages, the stuff that people throw away. Okay. It cuts the easiest with a knife.
Okay.
And I prefer to carve with a knife. And because of that curved shape of the knife that I use for detail, I can carve a face. Really, I can't do eyelashes, of course, but when you get close to the eye, I get the basic shapes, the globe, and there's a lot of semi-round shapes on your face. And so I use the softest foam for that.
And do you only work from sketchpad or do you sketch directly onto the surface?
Okay. I generally, if I'm doing a face for sure, I'll do a head-on view, and I'll draw there with what we call a felt tip mark. Okay. And this is something I do, it's a little strange. I'll draw with a green one you start with. That way, if I get a little sketchy, it doesn't matter. Then I can come back with a black one to refine it to get exactly the outline I want. Okay. Then I'll turn to the profile and I'll do that. It gets tricky, but if you've ever done wood carving, it's the same basic principle. I remove all this waste, then I stick it back on. Then you turn it around and cut the profile out. Now you've got a geometric limit, but I always cut larger than the line because sometimes you don't cut straight. And so if you cut an angle, you remove too much foam. But that's my basic system for transferring.
Okay, thank you.
But I also use the grid system that's historic. I think Michelangelo and Da Vinci and everybody used this. I draw a grid onto a photograph.
Yeah.
I draw that same grid onto my phone, and then it aids me to get the detail right.
Mm-hmm. Lovely, thank you. Charlotte is asking, step-by-step guide to painting, primer, base coat, and then colors? Or...
Okay. How you paint foam really depends on its end use.
Okay.
If it's going to be high up on your wall or something, you can probably apply like a thin plaster, what we call drywall compound here, or spackling compound, which are just paste. They're made up from plaster type materials. Then you can sand that and get your surface really, really smooth. Then apply a primer that goes with the kind of paints you want. I'm not sure if you call them latex there, but they're water-based paints instead of oil-based paints, just like you would use on a wall of a house. You can then paint it with that. Eventually, you can spray an artist's clear coating on it, and it will stay like that forever.
Okay.
Okay. If it's going outside, it's a total different application.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a question from Karen, and Karen is asking which glue is best to use.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Karen is asking which glue is best to use. Glue.
I haven't.
Sorry.
Try it one more time.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
say it again.
No problem. So, Karen, I've got a question from Karen, and she's asking which glue is best to use. Yeah.
Glue I'm going to use. Okay. This may not translate well because, again, I don't know what products y'all use. Okay. Here we use a urethane foam that's in a can, and it's primarily used to glue cracks around windows and doors. It's an insulation foam.
Okay.
So the one I use is one that's usable over and over again. We have a handle that screws on top of a cylinder of that urethane foam. We call it a gun. It's a lot like a spray gun in function. Okay, it has a long needle, it has a trigger, and you can squeeze the trigger, you can adjust how much comes out, and you can either get a little bitty measurement of foam to come out, or you can get a huge glob to come out. Okay.
Okay.
I apply this between surfaces, and then I'll put the two pieces of foam together. As soon as you spray it out, it starts to expand. And when you push them together, it collapses at expansion. Okay. But then it will try to recover, and it will try to push itself apart. So to counteract that, we take bamboo skewers, long sticks that you use of bamboo, and we stick them through the foam at angles to oppose that expansion, and you get a very good joint. That's one way.
Okay.
There are some spray foams that are made especially for foam. Every spray foam will work. Some of them will melt, so you have to be very careful. Here we have a product called 3M78 that's made for foam. There's another product that's a urethane glue that's a liquid in a bottle. A brand name we use here is Gorilla Glue. but all it is urethane foam in a bottle. You can pour that out on there.
Okay.
All urethanes need moisture to set up. And so if you take a spray bottle like you would mist your plants and you put your glue out and then you mist it, it becomes much more aggressive and it will hold things. You can put a weight on it, you can put bamboo on it, but somehow you got to have a force to hold them together until the glue sets up.
Thanks for watching right through to the end. All of Mitch's details are linked below, including his book and foam carving group, so make sure you check those out. At PMI Offcuts, we provide not-profit modeling foam for hobbyists, makers, schools, and creative projects. So if you want to get carving, get building, or just get inspired, have a look at the links below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves making things. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.